let me say this. This is Ray, by the way, and a testimony about how you feel is not necessarily what other people feel in terms of what transpired or will transpire or has ever been viewed at or spoken on or opinionated about. So my feelings are not necessarily your feelings or your outlook or your point of view or perspective. Given that, um, speaking to the issue of the late Edward Smith's funeral, this was the first time ever, my worst experience ever at a funeral. In 2005, 2006, I remember being married into the Smith Jones family, Jones side in particular. And it was a tax. It was a tax about young nieces and people in the family were just all out to attack me. They just hated my guts. Part of the reason why they hated my guts is because of the fact I wasn't into their culture. I wasn't into the things that they were doing. Married into the family and started observing a lot of stuff that just doesn't fly with me. A lot of drug use, a lot of gangs, a lot of all this pornography, all this other type of scenarios, and the lifestyles were basically one party to the next. And so I was in objection to that, and that wasn't the way I was raised, and it doesn't meet my Christian values and so forth. So I took a stand against a lot of that stuff, and by taking a stand, I was kicked out of a lot of houses, like Martinez Lavelle Jones and Erica Jones and stuff like that, Jones Taylor. It was funny because you go to these houses and they're starting in one floor trying to set up a liquor house, and the testimonies of my ex-wife went to that house and they were all drunk, naked, with everything showing out all over the place and so forth. That's not something I typically adhere to or wished for myself or my family. So I took a stand. And unfortunately, with the passing of Edward Smith, what ended up happening was we had a memorial dinner, me, my ex-wife, and the kids. And one of my children said, "You know what, Dad? My memories are of Edward intervening. He stopped um, Grandma Bernice from torturing me, from emotionally attacking me, and so forth." That's what I remember. I remember Bernice, stupefied, drunk, saying, "Who do you love? Who do you love, your daddy or your mama?" And she started screaming to my child, and said, "Well, you love your mama. You better say you love your mama." And that was one of the testimonies that my daughter shared with me with reference to her experiences in this family and being targeted and just unreal. And my son, he was always loved, but too young to know the difference between everything that was going on at that time with reference to divorce. And so when I'm coming into this glorious type of scenario, I'm in the church where it's a celebration of life scenario, and it Juju caught my eye, and I caught her eye, and it always loved Juju. Always had a good relationship with Juju. So Juju comes to sit next to me with her significant other, and what ends up happening is once Erica noted that, I mean, I could before that I could feel the presence of evil, and you could tell it was coming from where the family, the Jones family sat, not necessarily Smith family. And so Erica comes, and we were getting along. We started talking, me and Juju, and then Erica comes and removes Juju from next to me and says, "Family belongs on the other side," whatever. Nah, not during one time during this whole funeral service, whatever you want to call it. Did any one of those who had previously, we had, even after the divorce, years after, a lot of these nieces, nephews, whatever, they came back to talk in terms with me, whatever, regardless of what transpired. But during this funeral, they weren't talking to me. Um, Highly recognized as this is that the Smiths family, they are upstanding people, and they are loving people, and they were awesome throughout the whole scenario. It's just the backwardness, the evilness, the contrivance. So what ends up happening, Erica takes Gigi away from me, and it's like there was even more of an embodiment of evil, and it just continued from there. I was at graveside, and typically I have a lot to say, typically, but God, for some reason, in that moment, gave me a peace and assurance, and I couldn't comment. I was just taking pictures and whatever, because my purpose was, my ex-wife said, I cannot come, I can't get involved in that mess. It's too much mess, and I cannot do it. I can't go. And I understand, because was one of the most hard funerals I've ever been to, where you could feel evil, and wherein you people gave you looks, and so it wasn't a celebration of life for them. It was a continuation of malice and envy and hate and all this other stuff. So it's like, wow, even when somebody dies, you're gonna hold on to stuff, and you're never gonna give that stuff up. But it it solidifies and adds credence to my ex-wife's decision not to go, because this was one of the worst funerals I've ever been to. But in the testimony is this, is that God gave me a peace in the midst of all the funny looks and all the other stuff, and the refusal to talk and stuff like that. And it's like, typically a scenario of contact with me would say hi to everybody, but my mouth was shut. And I was just like, felt like an out of body experience, like you're there but you're not. My body was observing and not necessarily present. So it's like, wow, I didn't think that that would happen. And actually, after it all transpired, I'm like, oh my gosh, what just happened? It's like, dude, what just happened? So, I mean, it was funny because I saw people, and children more so, crying when they were putting roses on the thing. And I'm not sure if they understood, or have a chance. Hopefully they will, but I tell you what, there has to be a lot of prayer for that, because if you grow up in those type of environments, and what ends up happening, if you take on those characteristics and attributes, just like when I had to say no to uh, my stepdaughters seeing porn and being around that type of environment, and I took a stand in court. Persistence is needed. I took a stand in court saying I do not want that my children to be around Grandma Bernice, and I took a stand. And the validity and reality of that stand, and the blessingness of that stand, was realized when I heard my daughter say, "You don't understand, Dad. She was torturing us, torturing me." So, experiencing the hatred that was prevalent, it wasn't on the Smith side. The Smith family was awesome, dude. They just seems like a lot of church going good folk. But that Jones family, oh my gosh. And I just understand now why my ex-wife chose not to participate in that mess. Especially after what she said. I got a text messages the day after the funeral. She said everyone's looking for Bernice, and they don't know. Bernice got all this money and envelopes and stuff like that, and they don't know where she disappeared to. In turn, come to find out that she had gotten high. And it was funny because our family expressed love towards Edward by providing a contribution, and I presented it to my ex-wife, and she said, use it for the kids. That's what Edward would have wanted. And it was used to go ahead and have the honorary service and so forth, memorial dinner and so forth, and also will be used for in other capacities. But she was right. She said, if you give that woman any money, he worked all his life, Edward Smith worked all his life, and all that money disappeared because of her niece. And you give a drug addict additional money, you're going to go ahead and have stuff missing. And we put into place, she was here the day before the funeral, and we pointed, when someone is out of control and you know they're going to shoot themselves or whatever, and if you have the opportunity to put a boundary up to stop that, and we did, me and my ex-wife, we were doing paperwork on the day before the funeral to stop Bernice from possibly ending up with a felony charge. And it's sort of like my ex-wife did it to sort of stop the madness and stop Bernice, but for me it was more of a, that person's out of control, and you need to go ahead and do something to make sure they don't hurt themselves. But gosh, it's just rough. But that's one of my testimony about this funeral is God's presence and love in the midst of it, and celebrations of life, and burying the hatchet didn't happen on the Jones family side. Just ill will, a lot of faces, whatever, and it was almost like 2005 when they thought they were going to go ahead and do all this other stuff against me, and it didn't work out right. Well, take care. Bye.
How you doing? All right, and you? Yeah, they're all right. Yeah. A little bit on the sick side. Vomiting and diarrhea stuff. No, the kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take your hand.
All right.
All right, darling. All right, take care of the kids. All right.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going over there. Okay. I'm just gonna get something out this car.
Okay. I see you. You made it.
Yeah.
You know you got the bad day.
Uh-huh.
You know, bro, ever.